Chapter 431, A Drowning Man Shouldn't Desperately Clutch at Straws. Upon hearing Klein's question, Emlyn White jumped in fright as he carefully sized him up and said,
"You're richer than I thought."
He had imagined that Sherlock Moriarty would take at least a week to raise £2,450.
I've been saving for a long time.
Klein sighed in response. Emlyn nodded thoughtfully.
It's so lucrative being a private detective.
This is just an identity that makes things convenient. If you don't encounter a huge bounty, it'll be £200 to £300 a year.
Klein said frankly. Emlyn glanced at him and asked casually,
So what do you actually do? Smuggling arms? Stealing from the vaults of the rich and powerful? For Beyonders below Sequence 7, there's not much that can be done to save up more than £2,000 so quickly, and most of them are gray areas that border on breaking the law.
You, a vampire, are talking to me about breaking the law. It seems like you're rather eager to make some quick money.
Klein smiled.
Accept some relatively dangerous missions. If you aren't afraid of death, you can try.
Emlyn shut his mouth, and only after a long time did he say,
Come and find me in the evening. I'll take you to the seller's place.
What an obedient vampire.
Klein was about to agree, but he suddenly found it unsafe.
What if the seller gets thoughts from seeing all the money? What if he doesn't have the corresponding Beyonder ingredients and is trying to fool me to commit a robbery? Emlyn White can be trusted, but not necessarily the seller he's introducing. I have to find an excuse to perform a divination above the gray fog to confirm the degree of danger. Yes, there's no need for it to be so complicated. There's a better way.
After some thought, Klein turned his head to look at Emlyn.
No, go by yourself. I'll give you £1,000 as a deposit, and you'll bring the 2 ingredients to the Harvest Church. After confirmation, I'll pay the remaining balance. I believe the seller will accept this method. This will show the credit of a noble sanguine.
Upon being flattered, Emlyn unconsciously lifted his chin.
There's no problem with this way of trading.
Saying that, he let out a laugh.
Are you afraid that the other party will not keep their word? Are you more at ease in the Harvest Church?
Of course, anyone would feel safe when they see a Earth Mother blessed by the side who is over 2.2 meters tall and has exceptionally firm muscles. People who can deal with him wouldn't mind £2,000 to £3,000.
Klein smiled and pointed at Father Yutrovsky. Emlyn's face darkened, and he snorted.
Aren't you worried that I'll steal the £1,000 deposit?
Klein casually looked straight ahead.
Why should I be worried? You will come back here every day, making it easy to find you, and a living creature like a vampire would sell for more than £1,000.
Emlyn, who had been hit in a sore spot, muttered in exasperation.
Sanguine. Do you understand? Sanguine. Also, don't call me a creature.
Klein chuckled and didn't say anything as he waited for Emlyn to calm down. Finally, Emlyn reached out and rubbed his temples.
We'll do it the way you requested.
Klein immediately took out the envelope he had received that morning, and he handed it to him, along with a thick stack of cash worth £1,000.
See you here at 8 tonight.
After counting the bills, and after confirming that there was no mistake, Emlyn warily stole a glance at Father Yutrovsky and said in a low voice,
Mr. Private Detective, with you being in contact with a lot of intelligence and news, have you heard of an evil god known as the Fool?
Evil? Evil? You fool.
Inwardly, Klein nearly threw out a profanity. He answered with the most normal expression,
Many people are searching for believers of the Fool recently. Are you planning on joining their ranks to obtain the relevant bounty?
Emlyn sighed and said,
No, I'm only considering whether I should ask this evil god or the evil soul to help me dispel the psychological cue. As you know, the rumors going around include his specific honorific name, and as long as it's converted into Hermes or Ancient Hermes, it's possible to get a response. What do you know about him? How much harm will he bring to his believers? Will he forcefully change the believers' views?
Although it points to me, I still have to say, My dear vampire friend, you are like a drowning man desperately clutching at straws.
Feeling mixed emotions, Klein said,
The fool is very mysterious. Up to this day, apart from the news you already know, no one knows of his detailed situation. For example, how vast his clergy is, or what sort of corresponding prayer rituals there are. What puzzles me is that you aren't considering the two of your vamp. Sanguine's ancestor, the ancient goddess Lilith, as long as the ritual is correct and the offerings are appropriate, she will help you dispel the psychological cue.
Emlyn leaned back slightly and stared straight ahead, saying nothing for several seconds. He seemed to instantly become sullen. After a brief moment of silence, he said in a low voice,
Before the cataclysm, the ancestor had already rarely responded to prayers. Only certain special circumstances allowed us to get her help. This does not include the removal of a psychological cue.
In the legends of the City of Silver, the ancient goddess Lilith, who represented the moon, had already had her authority taken back by the awakened creator, or perhaps she had fallen in some battle among the gods earlier on. Then who is the one occasionally responding to the Sanguine's pleas? The primordial moon? Klein deliberately pressed,
Then, there's still the primordial moon to pray to. Many underground beyonders have rituals that borrow his power. This is mainly referring to the Shaman King and the corresponding biological creatures.
Klein added inwardly. Emlyn's lips quivered, but he didn't speak as there was an indescribable fear on his face. After a long time, he solemnly said,
I suspect that the primordial moon was impersonated by some evil god or a high-level devil. People who pray to him mostly experience change, turning cruel, crazy, and even filled with desire. And the remaining ones, with the Sanguine mainly, there is a higher chance of them losing control and becoming true monsters. There was once a powerful Sanguine that tried to pray due to some danger, but she ended up turning into nothing but a hunk of meat that only knows to mate and reproduce. She, together with bulls, rams, stallions, mice, and even plants and rocks, gave birth to one strange descendant after another. Each one of them developed their own monster species. Thankfully, she was quickly eliminated along with her descendants.
The primordial moon, is that dangerous? There was no mention of it in the Book of Secrets. Had Shaman King Klarman's thoughts been corrupted? Fortunately, I only referenced, modified, and prayed to myself.
Klein's heart raced in fright as a result of Emlyn White's description. This made him acutely realize that the hidden existences other than the 7 deities were indeed not that trustworthy.
Except me.
He sighed. At that moment, Emlyn smiled bitterly and said,
If the negative effects brought by the fool isn't that great, praying to him might be something to consider.
The only effect is that you will pay a certain amount of money for it.
In order to maintain his image, Klein could only pat Emlyn on the shoulder and draw a triangular sacred emblem on his chest.
It's very dangerous to pray to a hidden existence that you don't know about. If you're considering that, you might as well choose a faith out of the 7 deities you prefer. They won't affect your daily life and won't make you abandon your dolls.
If there's really no other way.
Emlyn suddenly found himself calmer than he had expected. Klein didn't linger on. He pushed his way out into the aisle and walked out of the Harvest Church. Looking out at the misty sky, he began to think about what to do next. There was no doubt that his current focus was on saving money and finding the ingredients.
Little Sun's side needs to stabilize a little more. To prevent him from being suspected again, I'll use the method of ridding a rampager's mental corruption as the promised payment. The deep-sea Naga's hair can be entrusted to Mr. Hanged Man. I'll have to rely on myself for the human skin shadows characteristic. There hasn't been any relevant information from Emlyn White and Eye of Wisdom, Mr. Stanton, for over a month. I'll have to try different channels. Yes, it's been quite long. It's likely that the high-sequence beyonder of the Rose School of Thought isn't monitoring the Bravehearts bar that closely. I'll go visit it in the evening and see if I can contact Miss Sharon and Merrick.
Klein quickly had an idea. In order to go to Braveheart's bar, he had to first go to Eastboro and change his worker's clothes in the 1-bedroom apartment he also rented on Black Palm Street. As he thought of this, he walked towards the carriage stop on the opposite side of the road. West Borough, inside grim cemetery. Forrest Wall, who was dressed in a black veiled hat, quietly walked beside Dorian Gray, a member of the Abraham family. She had accompanied him to place flowers on Lawrence, Elisa, and company's graves. While walking silently, her thoughts were completely focused on the Beyonder ingredient, the Spirit Eater's stomach pouch. She knew that she had already digested the apprentice potion, and as long as she could get the Spirit Eater's stomach pouch, she would become a trickmaster. However, she ultimately lacked the clues related to it, and the son, that she had the most expectations at being able to help her, didn't dare to hold a ritual or invite friends to hunt Spirit Eaters because of what had happened before. In order to advance as quickly as possible and escape the curse of the full moon, she had even asked Mr. Fool for help, hoping that his blessed could help her find the ingredients. In the process, she revealed that she had published her new book and was about to receive a fixed fee for the book, in order to prove that she had sufficient power to purchase it. She didn't fear that her real identity would be known by Mr. Fool, because she believed that Mr. Fool clearly knew it. In the secluded, quiet, and cold environment, Forrest and Dorian stopped at Lawrence's grave, looking at the photo taken after his death and reading the epitaph. "He's a good teacher." Dorian Gray remained silent for a long time before sighing.
How ironic.
Why?
Forrest asked in surprise. She had heard Lawrence mention that he was a public school teacher in Constant City, mid-Seashire, and that was why she had used such an epitaph.
This has nothing to do with you. It has to do with our family.
Dorian gave a self-deprecating laugh and bent down to put down the flowers. After straightening his body, he looked straight ahead and suddenly spoke out.
Forrest, do you want to become a Beyonder, the kind I described in my letter?
Chapter 432. Contracted Creatures. Dorian Gray's question didn't surprise Forrest at all. She had been prepared after keeping in contact with him for the past month, and she had even asked the experienced Mr. Hanged Man at the Tarot Club to decide what kind of expression and reaction she should use when faced with the question. Forrest asked in surprise,
Are there really such Beyonders?
Dorian gently nodded.
Yes.
He looked around to make sure that there was no one around. Then he walked up to a tree with fallen leaves and pressed his hand on it. Dorian's figure suddenly blurred, as if turning into a reflection in the water. When it was clear, he had already appeared behind the tree, his posture unchanging. Remembering the teachings of Mr. Hanged Man and Miss Justice, her mouth opened in a semicircle as she exclaimed,
Oh, God, that's really, really amazing.
Dorian walked back, smiled, and asked,
Do you want to become such a Beyonder?
Forrest fell silent for a moment before she answered him excitedly.
Yes.
Now that she was finally going to be a periphery member of the Abraham family, many things would be much easier for her in the future. Her heart was filled with genuine joy. Dorian laughed before turning his expression grave, asking in all seriousness,
Are you willing to be my student?
Forrest nodded.
Yes.
Dorian let out a sigh of relief and then made a self-deprecating comment.
I'm not a good teacher. I even taught a... there's no need to mention the past anymore. In short, don't hold too high of an expectation.
After considering it over this period of time, he had decided to learn from his previous experiences and lessons. He didn't tell Forrest the situation regarding the Abraham family and only treated their relationship as one of teacher and student. That way, he didn't have to worry about the other party coveting his family's few remaining mystical items. Forrest quickly confirmed the relationship between them.
No, your explanations of mysticism are excellent, really, Mr. Gray. No, teacher.
Dorian looked at the tombstone, shook his head, and exhaled.
I wasn't planning on taking in any more students, but your noble character infected me. If nothing unexpected happens, I can give you the corresponding potion today.
Forrest asked, surprised.
Today?
Back when she went to Backland Station to pick up Dorian Gray, she noticed that he was carrying only a very small suitcase, barely enough for a change of clothes. There was no evidence that he had any Beyonder ingredients on him. Fors made a vague guess.
Does he have his own resources and channels in Backland? Ones that belong to the Abraham family?
Her original plan was to rely on the inconvenience of the distance between them to sell off the Beyonder ingredients for the apprentice potion and then tell him that she had successfully advanced to become a Beyonder. This way, she was able to obtain a considerable amount of cash, as well as to avoid the tragic consequence of taking the apprentice potion again and having to spend time to digest it.
Yes.
Without explaining, Dorian pointed in the other direction.
Let's go see Labaro and Alisa first.
Taking a turn, they left Grim Cemetery and returned to the house in Sherwood Borough, which Fors and Sio had rented. For the past month or so, Shio, who had advanced to sheriff, had been leaving early and returning late every day in order to pay off her heavy debts. She had been trying hard to get every bounty she could get, so there was no doubt that she was of the house around noon. Dorian looked around casually.
Is there a quiet room?
Plenty.
Fors led her new teacher into the activity room on the first floor. Dorian circled the room, checked the surroundings, and then asked Fors to light a candle mixed with a piece of dark red sandalwood. He closed the door and drew the curtains. He walked to the candle and took out 2 bottles of essential oil and some common herbal powders. Fors curiously watched from the side and didn't rashly open her mouth, as if she was stunned by the atmosphere.
Holding a ritual? Shouldn't there be 3 candles?
After finishing the first part of the ritual, Dorian took a step back and, with a serious expression, switched to the language of ancient Hermes.
I summon in my name special spirit bodies roaming the upper realms, the void creature that loves music, Dorian Gray, Abraham's contract companion.
Whoosh! There was a sudden gust of wind in the activity room, and with a sobbing voice, the flickering candle flames were tinged with a deep blue hue. The rings of light quickly spread out, forming a door that was beyond the concept of normality. A ball of semi-illusory and half-corporeal objects flew out from the bottom of the circle of light. Its entire body was colored a milky white. There were no eyes, nose, arms, or legs around it. Only an opening which resembled a mouth cracked open over its surface. Dorian grinned, opened his mouth, and began to hum a gentle folk lullaby. The ball swayed left and right, appearing extremely satisfied. After he finished humming, Dorian extended his hand.
Malmuth, give me the items that I deposited with you the day before yesterday.
The ball jumped up and down as its body suddenly swelled while it opened its mouth extremely wide. Then it spat out 2 Beyonder ingredients which had strange lusters to them. Fors stared in surprise.
To think that can be done.
Dorian caught the apprentice potion's main ingredients, canceled the summoning, and ended the ritual. He turned his head and smiled at Fors.
Even in the spirit world, void creatures like Malmuth are extremely rare. Under normal circumstances, summoning rituals will not point to them. An elder of a sufficiently high sequence must enter the spirit world and, after a long period of searching, make a contract with one of them. That way, it will allow subsequent descendants to complete a summoning ritual with their corresponding name. After the void creature arrives, a new contract can be made, making them closely connected to oneself and no longer summonable by others.
Fors said from the bottom of her heart.
So that's how it is. That sounds interesting.
She couldn't help but look forward to the future.
If I don't consider the curse of the full moon, or how ordinary Beyonders are being suppressed and constantly facing danger, exploring this wonderful world would be the most delightful thing. I hope that one day I can truly roam the spirit world.
Dorian responded with a chuckle.
Malmuth's greatest ability is to swallow many items into its belly without causing them any harm. It's the equivalent of a mobile, hidden warehouse that almost no one can find. Of course, it can't store too much as its stomach has limited space. Also, it doesn't like people without talent in music. It would reject signing a contract with such people.
Just as Forrest breathed a sigh of relief, Dorian instructed her to get him a black stew pot.
At least I can play the liar.
Realizing that he was about to concoct the potion right there and then, she maintained her expression, but her heart was frantically praying for an accident.
I don't want to drink the apprentice potion again. That would waste a lot of time. If I had known that this would happen, then I would have been more honest. It's too late to tell the truth. Teacher Gray must have tried a divination attempt, but the outcome suffered interference. Confessing now would mean that there's a powerful person backing me or instigating me.
In the midst of her thoughts, she saw Dorian turn around and hand her a bottle of the bubbling potion. Dorian said in a flat but very seductive tone,
Drink it and you'll become a beyonder.
Then he reassured her.
Don't worry. There won't be any problems with me here.
Forrest gritted her teeth, received the apprentice potion, and drank it all in one gulp.
Okay.
At the same time, a thought flashed in her mind.
Honesty is the best policy.
The carriage stopped outside East Borough, and Klein, walking with a cane and a hat, entered the spacious slum in a relatively decent neighborhood. As he walked forward, he saw two familiar figures emerge from the relatively clean apartment in front of him. They were girls, one 17 or 18 years old, the other 15 or 16 years old, daughters of the laundry maid, Liv, Freja, and Daisy. The latter had once been kidnapped by Capim and was rescued by the Black Emperor. Daisy also spotted Klein and smiled brightly.
Good afternoon, Detective Moriarty.
Klein smiled and nodded before asking in puzzlement.
Daisy, don't you have public elementary school to attend?
At the behest of reporters like Mike Joseph and the push by the Church of Evernight, the Backlund government established a charity fund with Capim's estate, specifically to help women and families who had been hurt by Capim. Daisy's family took advantage of the opportunity to move from a shabby apartment in an environment with poor security to the outskirts of East Borough. They moved from one room to two, separating the laundry area from the place where they ate and slept. In addition, Daisy received a bursary for attending a public elementary school, and she was delighted that the charity fund was responsible for her tuition and meals, costing 3 pence a week. What puzzled Klein was that the public elementary school only had breaks on Sundays, so Daisy wasn't supposed to be here at this time. Daisy answered frankly.
The school is very close. I took advantage of the afternoon break to return and help Freja bring the washed and dried laundry to a client. She and Mother can't handle the workload.
The immediate effect of her going to school was that the amount of laundry which Liv and Freja could do every day decreased, obviously lowering their family income. If it wasn't for Mike's help applying for a grant from the charity, then they wouldn't be able to maintain their present lives. Therefore, there was no doubt that Freja wouldn't be able to enter a public elementary school, and when Daisy and Klein talked about it, her eyes were filled with unconcealed envy and pain. Despite not even being 18 years old yet, all she could do was silently watch her sister attend school. Klein noticed that detail and deliberately reminded Daisy.
You really should know that your mother and Freja are having a hard time. Treat them well.
Daisy nodded seriously and said,
I've thought about it. When things settle down, I'll teach Freja what I learned during the day at night, and on Sundays, I'll be her only tutor.
Freja's eyes suddenly blinked, and she couldn't help lowering her head. Klein praised her before bidding them farewell in a good mood, and he turned to another street.
Good, very good.
He went to Black Palm Street to change out of his worker clothes, and just after he left the apartment where he was renting a room from, he saw an old, middle-aged man walk over. He asked with a kind face,
Sir, have you heard of the original creator?
Chapter 433, Intelligence Peddler. The original creator? Klein was stunned for a moment, and then he immediately thought of the intelligence that old Kohler had previously given him. Recently, there had been people preaching the faith of the original creator in East Borough, the dock area, and the factory district. It pushed the belief that he hadn't really passed away, and that he existed in the body of every human being and every object. As long as one served him wholeheartedly and praised him, then not only would his believers be redeemed after death, but they would also enter his kingdom. They would also suffer tremendous improvements in their present life. For instance, having sizzling meat to eat every day. This was very close to the Aurora Order's theory of the mutated creator, so Klein had decided that it was the secret organization which was behind it. He felt that they had begun to value the vast majority of the poor after the Lenivus incident.
They've already developed so arrogantly to even solicit people on the streets?
Klein hesitated and replied,
I've heard of that.
The well-dressed middle-aged man immediately revealed a smile.
Then do you know about the incoming apocalypse? Do you know that the original creator will create a sanctuary to protect his believers?
For a moment, Klein thought of going with the flow and be inoculated so as to slowly infiltrate the Aurora Order's periphery organization so as to gather the appropriate evidence and clues to take revenge on them for seeking the believers of the fool. But after careful consideration, he felt that it was too dangerous. It was something that was tiring and troublesome for him to do alone, without any certainty of success. In the end, he decided to inform the machinery hive mind about the current situation and leave it to the official organizations to handle. After thinking through the problem, Klein's expression immediately darkened.
I don't know, and I don't want to know.
He strode forward, shaking off the middle-aged man and ignoring his shouts. On the way out of Eastborough, he watched carefully and found that the workers who had lost their jobs due to the off-season and the efficiency improvements from textile machines were grouped together. They were being comforted and were listening to the preaches from people of unknown identities.
The investigations of Eastborough, the dock area, and factory district were completed 2 months ago. Why haven't the 3 churches in Parliament produced any concrete measures yet? The importance that they've placed on this issue must have increased. It's impossible for them to not notice the current situation. Is this a trap for bigger fish? That's very risky and can easily get out of hand.
As Klein lampooned, he pushed the cap on his head as he walked out of Eastborough and went straight to the Backland Bridge area. At noon, the Bravehearts Bar had just opened, and there were almost no drunkards present. Only the nearby busy workers would come in and grab a simple lunch. Klein mingled with them and spent 10 pence on wheat bread with pork sausages and a glass of Southville beer, making himself appear rather rich. After leisurely filling his stomach and finishing his beer, he looked at the bartender.
Is Kaspar's Kalen in here?
He planned on replenishing some of his ordinary ammunition while he was here. The bartender glanced at him.
It seems like you haven't been here in a while. Kaspar's is dead. It's said that he was a little restless while sleeping at night, wrapping himself in a tight bundle and suffocating himself in the end. Heh, I don't really believe that kind of thing would happen. I've only heard about such things in ghost stories, but that's what those black and white dogs say.
Black and white dogs were referring to the police, who wore black and white checked uniforms.
Suffocating himself to death? That sounds like mysticism. Was it because the Rose School of Thought's high-sequence Beyonder was unable to find Miss Sharon and Merrick, and thus they chose to kill someone to vent their anger? Where's the bearing of being a high-sequence Beyonder? In that case, Kaspar's wasn't able to contact Miss Sharon. Perhaps they've already left Backland. Kaspar's wasn't prepared for the dangers of the Beyonder world. If it were me, I wouldn't have returned to the Bravehearts Bar. I would have taken all the money I saved up and go to another city for a change in environment. However, under normal circumstances, a high-sequence Beyonder wouldn't specially deal with such ordinary people. At most, they would force a mediumship ritual without considering the after-effects, as expected of the self-indulgent Rose School of Thought. To think a high-sequence Beyonder would actually do such a thing.
While feeling surprised, Klein also felt pity for the black market arms dealer. The bartender wiped a cup and continued.
If you wish to buy some stuff, there's a new dealer.
Who?
The bartender said without looking up.
Old man. He's in billiard room 3.
Klein immediately stood up, slowly walked towards that familiar place, and knocked on the unlocked door. A voice rang out.
Come in.
This voice sounds a little familiar. Klein pushed open the door and looked inside. Standing by the table was a boy that didn't look too old. He was dressed in an old overcoat, a brown bowler hat, and had bright red eyes. It was Ian, whom Klein had met when he first arrived in Backland. Back then, he was entrusted with the case of Detective Zreel's disappearance and was ultimately involved in the conflict over the manuscripts of a third-generation difference machine. He had been forced to pay a high price to have Mr. A from the Aurora Order kill the Intis ambassador that was sent to the Lowen Kingdom, Bakerlin Jean Madon.
It's you, Detective Moriarty?
He had deliberately stuck 2 whiskers above his mouth to make himself look older. Klein smiled as he entered the billiard room and closed the door in passing.
Long time no see.
He was initially surprised that Ian had appeared here and had become a black market arms dealer, but then he thought of the details behind the matter and found that it made sense. Klein being able to come to the Brave Hearts bar and find Kaspar's Kalinin was all thanks to Ian's introduction. This teenage boy definitely had some connections around here.
Yeah.
Ian wiped away his shocked expression and mumbled,
I went to Pritz Harbor for 2 months and found those guys to be so savage and cruel. They didn't even have the slightest bit of modesty or love for children, so I had no choice but to return to Backland and do what I was good at. When Kaspars died, I decided to switch careers.
Before Klein could say anything, he added,
Mr. Detective, I've always kept in mind that I still owe you 2 requests.
There's no need to explain so much, nor do I care what you've done in the past. Although I've always thought that your escape from MI9 was suspicious, I didn't care too much about it.
Klein picked up a cue stick, gestured, and said,
Other than dealing in black market weapons, you seem to be selling information?
Yes.
Ian answered very calmly.
What do you want to know? It's free.
Very straightforward. Feeling guilty about what happened to me previously?
Klein pushed the cue stick forward and hit the ball, sending a red ball right into the middle pocket. Without a trace of politeness, he straightened his body and said,
Recently, everyone has been looking for the believers of the Fool. There are many bounties available. What news do you have?
Nothing.
Ian thought for a moment and said,
I even suspect whether the Fool has any believers, since no one can find any clues.
This is what you call blasting air with a cannon.
Klein gave a silent, self-deprecating laugh before turning to ask,
In addition, there's another bounty. People are looking for a lecturer named Isaac Eggers. I wish to know who was the one behind the bounty, so as to determine if I should involve myself in it. Searching for people is very time-consuming.
Ian didn't directly answer. He surveyed his surroundings and lowered his voice.
MI9.
MI9? It's not the Numinous Episcopate. It seems like it really was arranged by N.C. Zangwill. He's trying to create conflict between Mr. Isaac and MI9. Perhaps he knows some secret that he shouldn't be aware of. A series of thoughts flashed through Klein's mind.
Finally, he smiled and said,
Looks like I don't have to worry about the bounty being false, but I'm afraid that the circumstances as to why Isaac Eggers is being pursued by MI9 is because he knows some secret. That being the case, the day I obtain the bounty might be the last day of my life.
Ian spread his hands.
I'm not sure about that, but you can provide only clues.
Good suggestion.
Without asking any more questions, Klein spent 5 soldi, replenished some of his ordinary ammunition, and left the Bravehearts bar. He got on the rental carriage and looked out the window at the gloomy weather. Suddenly, he felt a little wistful.
Kaspar's Kalinin is dead, which also means that Miss Sharon and Merrick will give up this base. With me only being able to contact them unilaterally, it'll be hard to find them, unless they encounter some difficulties that require my help, or they have reached the stage of dealing with the evil spirit buried in the ruins. Otherwise, I'll likely not be meeting them again. Although they can't be considered friends, we've cooperated with each other twice. I could interact with them as a Beyonder without hiding my face. Now there are too fewer people of such people. If it wasn't for the Desire Apostle, I would only have an oddity like the vampire, Imlin White, who I can talk about mysticism with, without any disguises. Thankfully.
As he was sighing silently, an ethereal voice suddenly sounded in his ears.
Is there something?
Klein instantly shuddered, and only when he saw who was sitting in front of him did he heave a sigh of relief. He laughed in exasperation and said,
Miss Sharon, do you always appear all of a sudden like this?
Dressed in a Gothic regal dress and a matching soft black hat, Sharon was sitting quietly on the other side of the carriage, her face as pale as ever.
I'll knock on the window next time.
Sharon nodded without emotion. She didn't repeat the question, but she looked quietly at Klein in a reserved manner.
Knocking on the window all of a sudden? That's equally scary.
Klein was in no hurry to mention the matter about the human-skinned shadow, and instead he asked,
Has the high-sequence Beyonder left?
Yes.
Sharon said tersely. Klein was slightly relieved as he warned her.
It could also be a trap.
As he said this, he remembered something and quickly added,
I finished reading the Book of Secrets, and I've obtained the corresponding information from other sources that praying to the primordial moon is prone to problems. It's best not to try.
All right.
Sharon didn't ask why. She paused for 1 second and said in an ethereal voice,
The primordial moon and the chained god seem to be arch-enemies.
Because they can switch sequences? Or could there be other reasons?
Klein thought as he directed the conversation to what really mattered.
Miss Sharon, do you know of any places with the characteristic of a human-skinned shadow?
Like a puppet, Sharon listened quietly before nodding her head.
Yes.
Chapter 434, Tomb and Bounty.
She knows.
Klein was overjoyed and quickly asked,
Where?
In his heart, he was already prepared to pay the consultation fee. Sharon sat there without moving and said, like a talking doll,
In one of the gatherings that Merrick participated in, someone once discovered the tomb of an ancient noble. They explored the periphery, but didn't dare to venture deep, but there were traces of human-skinned shadow activity. They hoped to recruit a team strong enough to completely explore the tomb and split the valuables equally.
To seek help in a gathering of Beyonders who are not familiar with each other, how can all parties guarantee each other's credibility? What if there's no tomb at all, and it's just a trap?
Klein quickly thought and asked in response,
Did they succeed?
Yes.
Sharon answered simply.
This.
Klein temporarily didn't pursue the details. He suppressed his voice to avoid being overheard by the carriage driver.
And then?
After that, they never appeared again.
Sharon calmly recounted.
One of the members was a friend of Merrick's, and he disappeared completely after that matter.
Without waiting for Klein to ask, she continued to speak with her ethereal voice.
Merrick found some of his friend's belongings. I used the method of divination to track them down to White Cliff Town, and I found a hidden entrance to the tomb at the river bend of the Stratford River. Merrick's friend was inside, but he was already dead.
You went in?
Klein blurted out.
No, I determined it using another method.
Sharon explained.
That tomb gave me a sense of great danger. I didn't try to explore it.
At this point, she looked at Klein with her blue eyes.
Without the help of a Sequence 4 Beyonder or a sealed artifact of a corresponding level, it would be best not to venture deep into that tomb.
Even you find it very dangerous. I don't need to go above the gray fog to divine it to know how terrifying it is.
Klein looked down at the floor of the carriage and thought for a few seconds.
Do you know which ancient noble's tomb it belongs to?
Sharon did not pause in her reply.
His last name is Amon.
Amon? A member of the family of that Amon who had possessed Little Son's body and almost sneaked into the mysterious space above the gray fog?
Klein used his ability as a clown to control the slight twitch of his eyelids. He asked in puzzlement,
Are you sure?
At this moment, a figure appeared in his mind, a black classic robe, a matching pointed hat, a broad forehead, a thin face, black eyes, black hair and a crystal monocle. Sharon's pale blonde hair shone through the mist like an oil painting drawn by a master, and she said in her usual flat tone,
According to the items obtained from the initial exploration, a member of the gathering who specializes in ancient history determined that the owner of the tomb came from the Tudor dynasty of the 4th epoch. The family name is Aemon.
It really is the blasphemer family of the 4th epoch. This family isn't cursed like the Abraham family, nor was it destroyed directly by the church of a certain goddess like the Antigonus family. According to the special and powerful performance Aman showed in the City of Silver, the situation of this family might be comparable to that of Zarathul's. They were all secretly passed down, with the presence of high-sequence beyonders among their ranks, perhaps even with powerful angels. They protect certain crucial secrets, such as the coordinates of the forsaken land of God. The danger of a tomb left behind by such a family can be imagined. Perhaps Aemon can borrow the power of certain changes to cast his gaze over from the distant forsaken land of God. I can't use the perspective of a low or mid-sequence beyonder to deduce the terror of a demigod.
Klein didn't ponder for long before denying the possibility of exploring the tomb of the Aemon family. Slightly disappointed, he looked up at Sharon.
Is that place the only place with a human skin shadow?
Sharon shook her head.
No.
Oh?
Klein's eyes lit up, and he assumed a listening posture. Sharon said, her voice unchanged.
I've participated in a gathering. A Beyonder promised that as long as someone completes a mission given by her, she would satisfy any reasonable request. When it comes to ingredients, it is limited to those below that of high-sequence Beyonder ingredients.
In other words, she can give any Beyonder ingredient below that of high-sequence Beyonders?
The first thought that came to Klein's mind was,
Is she bragging? Even for the Church of Evernight, only the Holy Cathedral, or in other words, the Cathedral of Serenity, would possess such a possibility. Many of these ingredients weren't commonly needed because they weren't needed at all.
Upon hearing Klein's question, Sharon calmly replied,
She's a high-sequence Beyonder.
High-sequence Beyonder? No wonder. That would be on the level of the high-ranking members of the churches or secret organizations. Even if they don't belong to any party, they would still build up their own faction. However, the promise of any type of Beyonder ingredient below a high-sequence potion definitely can't be completely met.
Klein momentarily had such a thought. Sharon simply added,
She said that certain ingredients would require a certain period of time.
That's more like it.
Klein asked with interest,
What mission did she give?
Sharon sat up straight and dignified.
Investigate Hero Bandit Black Emperor's true identity.
Klein believed that if he had been drinking water at that moment, then he wouldn't have been able to control himself, and that he would have sprayed it across from him.
Who did I offend? Why am I the target of a high-sequence Beyonder?
He first lamented in Chinese, then he quickly analyzed the possible parties.
Members of the Twilight Hermit Order? Because the Hero Bandit Black Emperor had killed the Desire Apostle, Berea? Members of the Aurora Order? They drew links to the Fool from the tarot cards I left during the Kapim incident, and they decided to investigate the Hero Bandit Black Emperor? Members of the 3 churches in MI9? Just to find out the truth about the Kapim affair? Every one of them is possible, and none of them can be ruled out.
Klein didn't show any abnormalities as he deliberated, and asked,
Why is she investigating the true identity of the Hero Bandit Black Emperor?
No one knows.
Sharon replied in the simplest of terms. Klein thought for 2 seconds and said, after organizing his words,
What kind of person is she? I want to know if I should take this mission.
Sharon remained silent for 2 seconds, seemingly in recollection. Then she described,
Female, above 1.70 meters tall, very well-proportioned, chestnut hair, was disguised, loves black leather boots, only occasionally attended the gatherings, and first appeared 2 months ago.
Loves wearing black leather boots, female, high-sequence Beyonder. When these 3 key words were put together, it immediately triggered a certain part of Klein's memories. Back when he went to the Royal Museum to steal the Black Emperor card, He had met a mysterious high-sequence beyonder in the reconstructed study of Emperor Roselle. She only revealed her feet in black leather boots, and when he borrowed the power of the gray fog to escape, he ended up running into the devil dog due to the side effects of the master key, and had to shout for help. Therefore, Sherlock Moriarty ended up meeting the female demigod again. Her? Why would she look for hero bandit Black Emperor? She's confirmed that the thief who stole the card of blasphemy is a spirit body, and knows what would happen if a spirit body carries and contains the Black Emperor card. Hence, she has locked onto the hero bandit Black Emperor who has similar traits. Klein quickly thought of a very convincing possibility. The only thing that confused him was how the other person knew that he had taken the Black Emperor card and not any other cards, such as the Abyss card or the Sun card, unless she was targeting the card of blasphemy, and she had investigated beforehand that it was the Black Emperor card. Well, Miss Sharon said that she joined the gathering for the first time more than 2 months ago. This matches the timing of Roselle's exhibition. Later, she occasionally participated without leaving Backland, or perhaps she returned regularly to search for the enemy who had taken the Black Emperor's card.
Klein's thoughts blazed through his mind as he gave a faint smile.
I'll keep an eye out for her. I hope there's something to be gained. She can forget about getting anything her entire life.
He added inwardly without hesitation. Sharon nodded almost imperceptibly and said nothing more about the human skin shadow. Obviously, she only had 2 leads, but it was still better than the vampire Emlyn White and Eye of Wisdom Isengard Stanton circle. Klein slowly exhaled, concealing his inward disappointment, and said with a respectful tone,
You and Merrick aren't troubled by the curse anymore, are you?
There's only one Scarlet Lunar Corona.
Sharon answered calmly. The person who wore the Scarlet Lunar Corona was immune to the full moon's effects, a dream item for mutants.
That is to say, one will be fine, and one will be in the same situation as before. When affected by the full moon, Merrick will be driven to insanity, while Miss Sharon will lose her strength. It appears Merrick is the one using it.
Klein thought as he changed topics.
Have you found a way to remove a rampager's mental corruption on the Beyonder characteristic left behind by Wraith Steve?
He casually asked this question without much hope.
In his heart, he believed that there was a greater chance with the sun.
No.
Sharon appeared like she was talking about someone else.
Perhaps I will sell you this method in the future and hope that you have saved up your gold pounds.
Klein tersely acknowledged and was suddenly unsure of how to continue the conversation. He paused for a few seconds before asking,
Where is White Cliff Town?
Backland suburbs, south of the bridge.
Sharon answered succinctly. She looked into Klein's eyes again.
Nothing else?
Nothing.
Klein first shook his head and then asked,
Can I tell others about the tomb?
Sure.
Sharon's figure rapidly faded before she disappeared from the carriage. Perhaps it was to conceal herself, as she never had the habit of using perfume, thus leaving behind an empty environment once more. Chapter 435. Aggregation Effect. 8 p.m. Harvest Church. After changing back into his usual attire, Klein looked around once as he pressed down on the edge of his hat. Then he walked into the hall and headed for Emlyn White, who was standing before 3 rows of candles on the right side of the hall. At the vampire's feet was a black suitcase. Its surface was seemingly covered with a layer of a wall of spirituality. Upon sensing Detective Sherlock Moriarty coming in, Emlyn was first pleased before revealing an alarmed look. He bent down to grab his suitcase and took a few steps back, closing the gap he had with Father Yutrovsky, who was focused on praying. Are you afraid that I'll rob you of the Beyonder ingredients? Klein stopped 3 meters away. Then he smiled and said,
Let me first verify if it's the 2 ingredients I need.
Emlyn White ran his hand through his hair, lifted the leather case to his chest, and undid the buckle. The wall of spirituality shattered as a result, turning into a light breeze that blew through the prayer hall. Klein, who had long activated his spirit vision, immediately saw bursts of strange and dazzling light. It was the spiritual radiance released by many Beyonder characteristics. There were two small boxes inside the suitcase. One was made of tin and had many patterns on it. It looked Spartan and heavy. The other was only a cardboard box. Holding the black leather suitcase in one hand, Emlyn opened the slightly tarnished silver-colored tin case. The item inside looked like a yellowish brown-peeled walnut with the grooves and ridges of a brain. Along with the flickering of the candle flame, its appearance constantly changed. Sometimes it would turn gray and appear wrinkled. At other times it would turn dark brown and extremely smooth. The colors would interweave, outlining a featureless face. At the sight of it, Klein felt the power of the potion, which he had completely digested and assimilated, stir a little, like a magnet encountering an opposite pole. He was able to control his body with his clown powers as he suppressed the feeling of attraction. He knew deep down that the item was a genuine mutated pituitary gland of a thousand-faced hunter.
It seems like what Emperor Roselle speculated in his diary is possible, that high-sequence items of the same pathway would unconsciously draw low- and mid-sequence beyonders to them, with a tendency to draw them together. Although the thousand-faced hunter's mutated pituitary gland is still very far from a high sequence and doesn't have that kind of special force of attraction, it contains enough beyonder characteristics. Moreover, I have digested the Sequence 7 potion. When the person and ingredients are sufficiently close, such a phenomenon will appear. I didn't notice it before because, firstly, the corresponding beyonder ingredients are of low quality, and secondly, my own strength is lacking, and I wasn't of a high enough sequence. Right, every time I digested the potion, an illusory starry sky would appear around me. There were many resplendent lights within, and they would pull one another in an attempt to converge. This might be a scene of the law of convergence of beyonder characteristics of the same pathway, and the greater the quality, the stronger the pull. Then, will beyonder characteristics of similar pathways conform to this law?
Klein's expression didn't change as he recalled the records in Roselle's diary, and combined with his 3 experiences of digesting potions, he was able to determine the existence of a certain law. Emlyn White glanced at him warily, quickly closed the tin box and opened the paper box next to it. The paper box was padded with thick cotton, and in the center of the box was a glass bottle that could hold 200 milliliters of liquid. The bottle was half empty, while the rest of it was filled with a viscous liquid that could change its color based on the change of light.
Any other problems?
Emlyn closed the paper box.
Let me confirm once more.
Klein took out a gold coin and let it spin between his fingers, as though it had a life of its own. Ding! The gold coin bounced up and fell down again, landing in Klein's palm. It was heads, indicating a positive response. Klein nodded slightly and took out stacks after stacks of notes from various pockets. They were in 10-pound, 5-pound, and 1-pound denominations.
1,450 pounds.
Klein placed the pile of cash on a nearby piece of furniture.
Retreat a few steps. No. 5 steps.
Emlyn called out cautiously. Klein smiled, raised his hands, and took 5 steps back. Emlyn cautiously moved closer, checking to see if there was any blank paper in the stack of cash. After doing a slight count, he threw the leather suitcase in his hand towards Klein. Klein was startled, and with his agile moves, he accurately caught the suitcase. He was afraid that the blood of the thousand-faced hunter would seep out after the bottle shattered. And Emlyn White took the opportunity to collect the bills and quickly retreated to the side of Father Yutravsky. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief and seriously check the amount and their authenticity. At the sight, Klein recalled the scene and suddenly felt ashamed. He and Emlyn had made a perfectly fine Church of Earth Mother Cathedral look like the scene of an arms or drugs trade. After confirming the condition of the 2 ingredients, Klein snapped his fingers, igniting a match he had specially separated in his clothes, and allowed the soaring red flames to envelop his body. When the flames descended back down, he had already disappeared. As he often met Emlyn White at the Harvest Church, he didn't mind if Father Yutravsky found out that he was a beyonder who had helped him eliminate his dark personality. He even felt that this would give him some form of friendship. Emlyn, who was counting the money, looked up and was stunned for a good 2 seconds. He muttered to himself in a low voice,
My suitcase. My tin box.
On the lamplit street, a carriage rolled over the puddles and headed for the edge of Empress Borough. Forrest has told her good friend, Zio de Racha, that she had a teacher and had ended up consuming another apprentice potion. After confirming that she didn't have any signs of losing control, Shio looked outside the window at the gas lamps, which weren't much taller than she was, and asked in puzzlement,
I've always wondered why they're preserved as ingredients and not as a potion. Your teacher could have concocted the potion beforehand and brought them here, so there was no need for him to do it on the spot.
Forrest gave a faint smile and said,
I've asked him about this before. He said that there are two main reasons. One is that different Beyonder ingredients have different uses, and when they're made into a potion, they cannot be used flexibly. The second is that when the Beyonder characteristics are solidified, they can be kept forever, but after it becomes a potion, that won't be the case unless one uses a special isolation technique.
Why?
Shio asked in surprise.
This isn't an ordinary type of medicine or Beyonder weapon in which its spirituality will continue to dissipate and weaken.
Forrest wasn't in the mood to laugh, but she had no choice but to maintain her smile.
It's not a problem about the characteristic loss, but that once Beyonder ingredients become potions, not only can humans absorb them, even other creatures or materials without life can. It's just relatively slower. For example, if I use a glass bottle to store the potion, it might appear fine. But after a few days, the glass bottle would finish drinking the potion, becoming a special mystical item. It might even gain intelligence. Of course, my teacher said that such a situation has very huge side effects, akin to what a rampager leaves behind. The 7 churches and some hidden factions have special isolation techniques, but it's rather troublesome, and they won't use it on low or mid-sequence potions.
How amazing!
Shio sighed. She took another look outside and said in a low voice,
We're almost there.
She and Forrest were here to attend the Beyonder gathering which Mr. A was holding. Forrest smiled while feeling her heart bleed.
I hope there's the Spirit Eater's stomach pouch.
Her teacher, Dorian Gray, had taught her the acting method before he left. He even gave her the potion formula for Trickmaster and got her to attempt to find the Beyonder ingredients on her own. If she hadn't gathered all of the ingredients by the time she digested the apprentice potion, she could write to him for help. This left Forrest in a rather lost state.
Why did I spend large sums of money to purchase the Trickmaster formula and the acting method? Up to now, the greatest and invaluable help the Tarot Club has given me were the things Mr. Hanged Man and Miss Justice taught me to take note of, as well as Mr. Fool's interference in divination. Otherwise, teacher would have long discovered a problem with me, and I wouldn't have become his student. Sigh, I'll just consider it as the price for neutralizing the full moon's curse.
As the thought crossed her mind, Forrest suddenly noticed that the house where Mr. A had his gathering held had visibly collapsed, and there were even scorch marks in many places.
There was a fierce battle here. Who dealt with Mr. A? An official organization?
Forrest immediately signaled to Shio and instructed the carriage driver outside.
Not here. 2 more streets up ahead.
Aurora orders base found. Terrorist organization suffers severe setback. The next day, Klein saw this article the moment he flipped the newspapers open.
Let's hope Mr. A died in this ambush.
He drew the crimson moon on his chest, in solemnity. He had already thrown the thousand-faced hunter's blood and mutated pituitary gland from last night above the gray fog to ensure that they wouldn't be lost.
Even if I die, they won't be lost.
Klein chewed on a piece of bacon with great ease. After last night's transaction, his cash reserves had fallen back below 1,000 pounds, leaving him with only 735 pounds, which was only enough to buy a deep-sea Naga's hair. After that, he didn't have the ability to purchase the human skin shadows characteristic. Without any better clues or money, Klein rested at home the entire morning. After lunch, he dressed up and headed straight for the Backland Bridge area. He had previously made an agreement with Carlson of the Machinery Hive Mind to find him at the Lucky Bar near the West Balaam Dock if he had any intelligence. If the intelligence was especially important, and Carlson wasn't there, he was to go straight to Lever Cathedral. After all, Sherlock Moriarty wasn't a member of a secret organization, so there was no need for caution. There weren't many customers at Lucky Bar in the afternoon, so Klein instantly saw Carlson sitting and drinking alone in a corner of the bar. He walked over, knocked on the table, and reported with a suppressed voice.
Many people in Eastborough are spreading the faith of the original creator.
Carlson sipped some alcohol brewed from pure malt and replied noncommittally,
I'm aware.
As expected.
Klein commented silently before smiling.
I have a clue regarding a fourth epoch tomb of a noble.
Ah.
The glass in Carlson's hand paused as he looked at Klein in surprise, and he unconsciously nudged his thick glasses. But he noticed that Detective Sherlock Moriarty wasn't continuing to describe the matter, but looking at the bartender a few steps away while saying with a smile,
1 glass of Southville beer,